everyone started. The family, the community, the investigators. This is basically a terrible event. And somehow, as the layers peel back, it gets darker. It takes a special kind of evil to murder your family. But 3 generations of them? That's a different level entirely. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Beauty and Crime Sunday with me, in which I do my skincare while I talk about the chilling cases I found this week. So if this is something that might interest you, please consider subscribing and ring the bell so you don't miss any cases like this one. Now let's start. Our story actually starts in Carnation, Washington. Carnation is located about 25 miles east of Seattle, and although it's technically classed as a city, don't really expect a skyline. It's only 1 square mile, so the population, it's over 2,100 people, so not that many actually. It was established in the mid 1800s, and Carnation has stayed true to its roots. Most of the community is still centered around farming. It's a very picturesque place to live in that practically breeds the deep green of the Pacific Northwest. So very safe, very peaceful, and the typical place that everyone considers as a perfect place to raise a family. But on Christmas Eve of 2007, things would definitely take a wild turn. One of the families among those 2,100 people would never see another holiday ever again. Wayne and Judy Anderson were soon to be retired, who had been married for over 31 years. Wayne worked as an engineer at Boeing, so very smart dude. He was a very quiet family man who enjoyed fishing and rebuilding all 4 cars. Judy, however, she worked for the US Postal Service. Very steady, reliable, and kind. They had 3 children, Scott, Mary, and Michelle. Scott was 32 years old and was married to his wife Erica, and together they had 2 kids, Olivia 5 and Nathan 3. So obviously Scott and Mary had alongside moved out, but Michelle still lived in the property, just not in the main house. She lived in a trailer out back with her boyfriend Joseph. So now, not everything was perfect in this family. There was small rumblings, minor disagreements between all of them. Michelle and Joseph weren't working and had begun falling behind on money. Judy and Wayne were pressuring them to start paying rent for the trailer they were actually living in. There was some bitterness about it, about money owed within the family, but nothing really explosive. It was just the typical things your parents will tell you, oh, you need to start making money, move on, have your own life, don't live with us all the time. So nothing really that would set off alarms, right? The Andersons were still pretty close, and by all counts, still pretty happy. But that would change. Everything would change. On December 24, 2007, the Andersons family all gathered for Christmas Eve at Wayne and Judy's house. The house was warm, cozy. A tall Christmas tree stood in the middle of the living room, and presents nearly tucked under the tree. The scent of roasting ham was filled in the air. Judy was wrapping the last presents in the kitchen, and Wayne was just relaxing on the sofa. And then out of nowhere, the door just opened. 2 people stepped inside, both armed. One with a concealed .357 revolver, the other one with a 9mm pistol. But this wasn't a home invasion by random people, no. This was Michelle Anderson and the boyfriend Joseph. Obviously, Wayne and Judy had no idea of what was about to happen. No real reason to suspect anything bad would ever happened. The pair had shown up early to the family gathering, and for a tiny moment things seemed to normal. Joseph made its way to talk to Judy at the kitchen, all smiles playing the part. And here the weird thing, you might be like, yeah, but they were armed. Well, if you are not from the US, this might not seem normal to you, but people do walk with guns and stuff, so Europeans might be shocked right now. But the problem here was that then Michelle raised the gun, first red flag, and pointed to her father. But her plan did not go as smoothly because the first shot, she missed. And she tried to fire it again, but the gun got jammed. Joseph rushed into the living room to control and pull the trigger. Wayne Anderson collapsed on the floor. He then turned into Judy, went into the kitchen and just shot her. This was only the beginning because on a Christmas Eve, the normal thing is that all the family will gather at one house. So, Scott, Eric, and the both little kids were still on their way to the house. And Joseph and Michelle were not done yet. It was only the start of the devastation. After killing Wayne and Judy, Michelle and Joseph took their bodies and just dragged them outside and stuffed it into the backyard shed, cold, lifeless, and hidden like they were garbage. But then they returned to the house and they started cleaning. Blood was mopped, surfaces wiped down. The living room was reset, just enough to seem like nothing happened in the living room. And that's exactly what they wanted because more visitors were coming. So roughly an hour later, Scott Anderson, Michelle's brother, arrived at the house with his wife Erica and the two kids. The house looked very calm, quiet, and very ordinary. It was about 4 p.m. The family stepped inside, shook off the cold, and gathered around the Christmas tree, probably wondering where everyone was, and aware of the horrors that just happened hours before. And then Michelle and Joseph, they just stepped inside from the hallway. Michelle confronted Scott just randomly about money he supposedly owed her. What should have been just a quiet holiday, it ended up being a fight over money. Tension snapped and voices rose, and then Michelle decided to pull out a gun. Scott, I believe in a moment of instinct, he just went for her, but he didn't really make it far. She pulled the trigger twice before he could ever reach her, and then he just collapsed on the floor. Erica now panicked. She jumped over the sofa and she just grabbed her phone. She dialed 911, her fingers fumbling, voice shaking, but she got connected to the call. In those short, very horrifying seconds, Erica screamed into the phone. Not the kids, but that's all the operators heard. Before Joseph actually reached her, yanked the phone out of her hand, tore out the batteries, and smashed it into the wall. And then he shot Erica twice. With just 14 bullets, Michelle and Joseph, they just erased 3 generations of a single family. Because after they killed Erica, they obviously killed the 2 kids. And what it makes it the most disturbing is that they waited. They knew who was coming and they prepared for it. The motive, really a petty dispute about money, resentment, and a very twisted sense of revenge. A grudge so shallow that it really did not even need a conversation about it, let alone a massacre. Meanwhile, back at the 911 call center, the operator who answered the call was obviously very shaken for what he just heard the sudden screaming and then the disconnection of the call. So she kind of knew that something was very wrong. So she did end up alerting the authorities so they could have a check on the house. Later that evening, officers actually got into the Andersons' house, but they were met with an obstacle. The gate was locked. Anticipating that the police would eventually come, Michelle had shut and locked the entrance of the property. And instead of breaking in like normal police officers would if there was an emergency, they just knocked twice, heard absolutely nothing, and they were like, oh, it's fine, it's Christmas Eve, I'm just gonna go home and have dinner. And in the report they said, oh, nothing suspicious, no probable cause to enter. They try again another day. And in neutral, uneventful cases, that's often where it actually ends. But time waits for no one in this case. December 2026, Boxing Day, while most of us are still in pajamas, eating leftover pie, the US Postal Service is actually back in business. That was the day Judy Anderson was supposed to actually return to work. But when she didn't show up, coworkers started asking a lot of questions. It was very weird that Judy would miss a shift and more without saying anything. The absence would finally trigger the discovery of what happened inside the Andersons' house. Over that morning, as hours passed by without anyone knowing about Judy, her best friend Linda started to worry a lot. So Judy was dependable, very consistent, the kind of woman who called if she was going to be 2 minutes late to work. So missing a full day of work without saying anything, something might have happened. Linda had a very bad gut feeling that something was very wrong. So she drove straight into the Andersons' property, arriving just after 8 a.m. on December 26. So pretty early in the morning. When she got there, she ran into the same obstacle the police officer had. A locked door. But unlike them, Linda had something the police didn't: common sense. She parked her car, got out, and get this, she just walked around the gate. Yes, it was that easy. No bolt cutters, no warrant, just boots and basic logic. But unfortunately, when she got to the house, things were not that simple. She knocked 3 times, silence. She knocked again, complete silence. So she did try the door, and guess what? It was unlocked. Calling out for Judy, Linda stepped inside the house, hoping maybe she would find her best friend watching TV. But what she found instead would probably stay in her mind forever. From across the room, she saw 2 bodies, Erica and little Nathan, just 3 years old. Linda didn't really panic, she didn't scream. She rushed inside Wayne's and Judy's bedroom and just called 911. In that call, she made sure to tell the dispatcher something very important: that Michelle, her daughter, still lived in that property, and that she had lately been very upset about dispute about money.
There's been a murder. There's 2 people dead that I can see right now.
Inside?
I just came up. She works with me.
Inside the house?
Yes.
What do you see?
There's a baby and a man and a woman, and she's my best friend.
Linda wasn't just brave, she was already very suspicious about her. So police arrived back at the Andersons family around 9:30 a.m. And this time they weren't leaving, thank God. The first body they found was Scott Anderson's, followed by Eric and Nathan, just as Linda had described. But when they were looking further, they found the shed. Inside it there were the bodies of Wayne and Judy Anderson. But if you made the count, there are still 2 people unaccounted for. That afternoon, around lunchtime, a black pickup truck had appeared at the Andersons' property. To get there, The two had to drive past a dozen police cars, media bands, and a yellow crime tape wrapping around the property like a warning sign. And how did Michelle and Joseph react? Well, not even a flinch. No shock, no fear, no tears. They didn't really ask, "Oh my god, what is going on?" They just walked to the closest officers they could find and just like it was nothing. That obviously raised red flags instantly. And the media, obviously, they capture the whole thing in 4K, down to the exact second the couple were separated for questioning. While in custody, the two of them told a story. At first, it sounded like a bad improv skit. Michelle claimed that she and Joseph had left for Las Vegas on Christmas Eve to get married. A more original story? No, they couldn't think of any. But according to her, they got lost somewhere, turned around and came back home. So police were not buying the story, and when the detectives asked Michelle why she thought the authorities were at her house, that was the breaking point for her. She looked down. Then she said the words that chilled everyone in the room. "What the hell have I done? I'm a monster." When detectives asked her why she felt the need to wipe out her entire family, her answer was she was tired. She was tired of being stepped on. She claimed her brother Scott owed her around $40,000. Her parents started asking for her to pay rent at the house. And as for the children, Michelle believed they would probably be too traumatized to survive what they had seen. So, kill them all, I guess. In her mind, the only mercy was she told detectives that she started planning this whole murder like 2 weeks ago. She convinced Joseph to help, and together they mapped it out, the whole murder. She went into detail, all of it. It took over 2 hours for her to describe everything. She even led police to the exact spot where she and Joseph had discarded one of the murder weapons, near the Snoqualmie River, not very far from the actual property. On December 28, 2007, both Michelle Anderson and Joseph were charged for 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. Michelle confessed very quickly. She even told the prosecutors, "I want the most severe punishment. Give me the death penalty." But this case would drag on for years. It wouldn't be until 2015 and 2016 that both of them would face consequences for their actions. And the trial, while it was full of twists, Joseph's trial began on January 25, 2015, and his defense claimed he had been manipulated by Michelle the whole entire time, that he was mentally ill, heavily medicated on anti-anxiety and antidepressant drugs, and that he had no capacity to think clearly, let alone refuse to her. During his testimony, Joseph laughed, as he described the look on Judy Anderson's face when he shot at her.
So I went and moved Judy first. I put a bag over it because I couldn't look at her because of the emptiness that she should be.
It was a very distorted fracture moment. Was he mentally breaking down, or was it something much worse? Regardless, on May 13, 2015, Joseph was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He narrowly avoided the death penalty. 8 out of 12 jurors had voted to it. So exactly 1 year later, on January 15, 2016, it was time for Michelle. Her defense claimed that she had suffered abuse from her parents and her brothers her entire time. But her taped confession told another story. She brought up money about 30 times in that confession. She wanted to show in court a little bit of regret, but her words rang a little hollow. On March 4, 2016, Michelle Anderson was convicted to 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. And on April 21st, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole, just like Joseph. So the two of them would never see freedom ever again. And that is the heartbreaking story of the Anderson family. 3 generations, 6 lives just murdered, wiped out on one night over a very petty grudge about some disputes about money. Some cases leave you with questions more than answers sometimes. This one just leaves you cold. Thanks for sticking with me in this very heavy case. Stories like this really remind us how fragile families can be and how sometimes the biggest betrayals come from people very close to us. If you found this case interesting, please consider subscribing and also tell me your deepest thoughts about this case in the comments. You can also tell me about recommendation about different cases, solved or unsolved. I prefer solved ones, but I post new cases every single week, so see you in the next one. As always, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, do your skincare. And if you don't end up like a glazed donut at the end of it, you're not doing it right. Bye bye.